Good morning, everybody. I hope somebody keeps me on time because when I get nervous, I tend to speak and run on sentences. So if someone could just holler if I seem to be running over time, I'd appreciate it. Um, Before I get started, I wanted to thank Melissa and Sarah. If you've been to a conference or if you've ever organized one, the fact that they've been able to pull this together in I think a month and a half I've never seen that before, and that was really amazing. Thank you so much for your organization and keeping us together. That was really great. Before I get started, I needed to bring 3 people into the room. The first person is Dr. Ruth Nicole Brown. She was my advisor. Yay, people She was my advisor. I defended last year, but I actually just officially deposited my dissertation last week. So I'm done. And she's a large reason why I even have anything to say or have stories to bring to you on behalf of the girls in Soul Hot. So I wanted to make sure that Dr. Ruth Nicole Brown was in the room. And I also needed, especially after the last 2 weeks, I needed to bring Prince into the room. Prince has a lot to do with who I am, who I consider myself to be, has a lot to do with the work that we did with the girls in terms of making it plain. And as a quote from him is, "A true spirit transcends the rules." And so we definitely tried to break as many rules as we could in co-creating my dissertation, so I needed to bring him into the room. And finally, the girls. So Soul Hot is an after-school place, and we don't call it a program per se, we don't call it a model because of the baggage around some of that, but we call it a space, we call it a spirit, and it's a space where at my particular research site, we use disposable and digital cameras for girls to investigate their own lives and create counter-narratives to the stereotypes about Black girls in school. I'm over here expecting you to move. I don't use clickers. No, that's okay. No, that's... How would I touch the bottom? There you go. So this is a way to bring them into the space. I believe that saving our lives, hear our truth, Soul Hot is a verb, an adjective, a noun, a call to action, and an experience that surpasses every binary ever created about Black girls and women. In Soul Hot, we are always negotiating back and forth between being Black girls and being women, depending on the moment at hand. Only in my work with the girls have I come to understand how important it is to own this gift of photography, recognize its potential to disrupt paradigms and binaries, trust in it freely, and share it freely. Since this recognition, I find my photography of and with Black girls to be about finding freedom to serve as our way to let the world know that we are here, and more importantly, with our cameras, we are looking at you, looking at us. Oops, sorry. We could listen to Stevie all day, and we want Stevie to take care of himself. Be healthy, stay healthy, please, Stevie. So starting with the issue, and I say issue, I don't call it a statement of the problem because Black girls are not the problem. Despite the frantic media display of Black girl fights and the rising statistics of school suspensions and expulsions, what has been most telling in my work with Black girls is that they are not the problem and their lives do matter. However, despite the academic potential and achievement of Black girls in schools, they are still thought to be loud, deviant, hypersexual, and resistant to authority. The influence of these stereotypes of Black girls, coupled with historical inequities in education for Black students, continues to negatively impact their educational experiences and severely limit their pathways to success. And when I speak of historical inequities, it's important for me to also say that, Dr. Joyce Ladner, I've been blessed to call her Mama Ladner, wrote Tomorrow's Tomorrow in 1971. Kathy Cohen brought us together in 2005 around Black girls and hip hop, and we're in 2016. So we've been here for a long time, not just the last few years. And also, it's a pleasure and an honor to speak in a room with Dr. Elaine Richardson, who has been doing this work for, I can't wait to hear from her next, who has been doing this work for a very long time, and I consider to be one of the pioneers in Black girl work. I appreciate that the presentations that have happened today and yesterday have brought up the words stereotypes, loving on, narratives, messy, participatory action research, and investigate. So part of my presentation is to definitely talk about the how we do what we do in Soul Hot around photography, and most importantly, bring the narratives of the girls to you in their words. My thought for the day: because of intersectional oppressions and because of historical traumas, and just because we have to do things different with Black girls, they have been told to be quiet for too long. We have to step back and let them speak, and more importantly, we have to listen. And when you listen to Black girls, what results are their counter narratives. So how do we come to photography in Soul Hot? Soul Hot was started in 2006, the fall of 2006 at the Boys and Girls Club. Dr. Ruth Nicole Brown put the call of action out. 7 women responded to go work with Black girls. That was basically the call. She led some community canvassing around the club to get girls to come, and also girls that were already coming to the club. One of our Soul Hot rituals, and I totally do this for the girls, one of our Soul Hot rituals every time we came together was to dance, right? Ba-ti dance, ba-ba-ti dance, ba-ti dance, ba-ba-ti dance. My name is Candy, and I am here to say all day, ba-ti dance, ba-ba-ti dance. So that's how we started, but I didn't dance. Despite the fact that my father's Jamaican and my mother's Puerto Rican, I was embarrassed to dance in front of the girls. However, my father is also a photographer, so I took pictures with my cell phone, and you can't take pictures of girls and dance at the same time. So I got out of dancing. After the first year of taking pictures, Dr. Ruth Nicole Brown said, these are kind of good, like you have some kind of inherent genius, some kind of skill around this, and this could potentially be a dissertation topic. And so that's how we came to photography in Soul Hot, taking photos, and that's how I came to the topic for my dissertation. When she said I could use photos as data, I didn't believe her. I felt that it wouldn't be considered valid. I was going with my training, that it'd be interpretive, and it wouldn't be considered objective research. She told me about photo voice. And photo voice as something that was already established, particularly within public health circles, by Carolyn Wang out of University of Michigan, and also used typically in other countries working with marginalized communities. And so photo voice is a process basically where people come to identify, represent, and enhance their community through a specific photographic technique. It entrusts cameras in the hands of the research participants to enable them as actors, recorders, and potential catalysts for change in their own communities. So essentially speaking for themselves. In the work that was happening with photo voice in this country, folks were working with young people where they would have cameras and they would go out into their communities and investigate what the issues were. So for example, they had used photo voice with a group out in, I want to say San Francisco, where they had to map out and have photos to document the lack of safe spaces for young people. And then they would take that to policymakers, the city council, and use that as evidence of what needed to be done on their behalf. In Soul Hot, we are committed to articulating out loud that we see how you see us and affirm our power in countering negative stories. In Soul Hot, Black girls often feel as though they are being investigated by the outside world, by social workers, teachers, administrators. So through our disruptive method of using photography and documentary photography, we investigate our own lives and find ways to present back to the world positive and true representations of what we learn. Photo Voice was essentially a way for Dr. Brown to convince me that I could use photos as data, but it was also an established research process that allowed us to gain access into the school where we ultimately ended up working. So talking about Photo Voice as a tool of civic engagement, they loved it. And they signed off on the paperwork quickly. So what did we want to know? And what did we know that the girls wanted to tell us? Our questions were, what negatively constructed images of Black girls as community members and middle school students have SoulHot participants been forced to consume? What do Black girls see themselves, how do Black girls see themselves in relationship to school and community? Specifically, what are their counter narratives? And then what influence does the use of visual methods in SoulHot offer to traditional visual methodology? More specifically, what ended up happening is we established what we call Black girl authored photography, but I had also coined Black girl gaze. And I had come to the term Black girl gaze as a result of, and it's been mentioned before, about the white gaze upon Black girls, about the male gaze around Black girls, but also Bell Hooks specifically, who talks about our absolute need to create our own gaze in conversation with the gazes upon ourselves. So for us, Black girl gaze, our Black girl gaze is important and necessary because one, it's situated in a relevant moment of time where everybody's taking photos, everybody's taking selfies, everybody has a camera on hand, and Black girls especially are participating in that. It also claims the voice of authority that Black girls have in choosing images that portray key aspects of their lives as they deem important, and also to deconstruct the images that are of them out there, you know, Video Vixen, the Black girl fight videos on social media that speak back to the stereotypical narratives about who they're supposed to be. And finally, offers counter narratives about the Black girls and compelling visions of truth in response to those stereotypes. Black feminism and critical race theory essentially frames this research and frames the quote-unquote model that we used with the girls. Critical race theory allows a space for the girls' narratives to be considered valid and necessary, and also takes into account the historical traumas and the intersectional, that's where Black feminism comes in, the intersectional oppressions that Black girls and Black women have historically faced. Black feminism connects the girls to the historical traumas of Black women who essentially never were allowed to have Black girlhoods and are constantly trying to find ways to connect back to those Black girlhoods as Black women. I was thinking of the woman yesterday who talked about how she was treated at work, being similar to how we're saying girls are treated at school. It's just kind of a continuing trauma. So how did the girls tell us what we wanted to know? We went in with Photo Voice and we came out with documentary photography. Essentially, what we realized in the girls and the photos that they were taking, and then the reading that I was starting to do, is that they were essentially continuing the legacy of how we've used photography in African American movements for freedom. Specifically thinking about Gordon Parks, thinking about Deborah Willis, who wrote Posing Beauty, and had photographs in there about, you know, contemporary notions of beauty among Black girls and women, and especially thinking about Carrie Mae Weems, who had an incredible photography exhibit called the Kitchen Table Series. I don't know if folks have seen that, but it once we started to develop the photographs that the girls were taking, it was just so obvious that they were doing exactly what's been done. So in that sense, the work that we've done, the work that we were doing, isn't necessarily brand new. And in that sense, we honor those who have done this work before us, but it's ours, and that matters. And also, with our documentary photography, we had to ensure that what we were doing with Black girls and the things we were talking about were in the spirit of what we called celebration versus investigation. Dr. Ruth Nicole Brown coined the phrase Black Girlhood Celebration. It was the title of her first book. And once we were in the school working with the girls, we also conducted interviews with them. And this was after we had already spent a couple of sessions talking with them. And, you know, we have snacks and have kind of free-flowing conversation that were always great, that were always so telling. It was so obvious that the girls felt not judged, that they felt safe in that space. But when it came down to the one-on-one interviews, and I remember one in particular that I actually wrote about in a field note. And it was with this one girl, and she walks in for the interview, and my field note afterwards is, I was just as nervous before the interviews with the girls, and I'm sure they were just as nervous as I was. Each one would walk into the room where we were interviewing, but they didn't have the same Black girl smiles that they would have when we were together after school. This morning, she walked into the room, she sat in the chair, really nervous-like, and she said to us, "Am I being investigated?" And we both found that really odd because we had already established relationships with her, so she knew who we were and that we had our best interests at heart. She says, "Am I being investigated?" And in that moment, my heart kind of just broke open because I knew what she meant. And I remembered growing up and how quickly the smiles left our faces, mine and my brother's, when social workers were coming into our community to investigate families. And so I knew that's what she was talking about. She was talking about the fact that when people ask her to sit down and have an interview, she feels like she's being investigated. So the spirit of our work really needed to be celebration versus investigation. And before we go into how we've decided to present the narratives, it's important to say that our knowledge in Soul Hot is created collectively, and that's important. Single authorship for the photos doesn't exist on purpose. Sometimes it's kind of accident. We don't remember who took the photographs. So, but it's purposeful in the sense that it doesn't matter. So in that sense, our knowledge is created collectively, and it's not one person singled out over another. Okay, great. So the counter narratives are presented in what I call a photo essay remix, and the title is Black Girl Gaze, a talk back to the stereotypes. This is a photo that one of our girls took, and her mom owns a hair salon. And so when she took this photograph, I kind of created the captions, and they've seen the captions when we had the photos on display. The collective work we do is not brand new, but it's ours. I was thinking back to the history of hot combs with Black women in our community and our families. Did I just do something? Oh, sorry. Should I just play with the buttons and see if it comes back up? Okay, great. And yeah, it's not working. So can you just go through them? So next photo, some of this is double entendre. So Black girls dance too sexually. Clearly that wasn't the case when we were dancing together in that space. Black girls have too much attitude. She wanted to take this photo, no talking and refocus. Refocus was the place where Black girls in the school were disappeared to during the day, after school. So for her, that's where she made that connection about Black girls having too much attitude. A little bit of attitude, you got disappeared to that space every day. Black girls are fast. This was a break that we took during our program, and when I saw the girls running, I thought, wow, that speaks so opposite to black girls being fast, supposedly. But, you know, they are fast in that way. You Are Not My Mama. These are one of my kind of daughters. She told me about a story about what she says being assaulted by an administrator in the hallway of the school for not having a bathroom pass. And she wasn't given one, and the administrator didn't believe her and just started yelling at her for not having a pass. She should have known better. And finally, she said, "You don't yell at me like that, only my mama does." Of course, that landed her in serious suspension and refocus. During my prelim, we had talked about this photo and the story, and come to the conclusion that, you know, in black families and black culture, the only person who can yell at you like that is your mama. You know, so in that sense, she was correct, right? You can't yell at me like that. Only my mama yells at me like that. And so in that sense, I started to also realize that there were these core competencies that were being revealed in the work that would really help with researchers that are doing work with black girls or doing work with teachers that are working with black girls. It's not what black girls say, it's how we say it. That's Dr. Ruth Nicole Brown's coin. This is about representations, how people read us, which is what Dr. Monique Morris was talking about also. Everywhere I stand, I'm proud to be a black girl. We had scavenger hunt prompts where we would give them cameras and they were asked to take photos within the school of where they felt the proudest to be a black girl. I thought they'd all take pictures in the bathroom, in the lunchroom. Those were my kind of researcher assumptions. As soon as we exited the classroom, she said, "No, take a picture of me right here." I said, "Why?" She said, "Because anywhere I stand, I'm proud to be a black girl." So this was like researcher checked. Keisha won. And lastly, we see how you see us. And so that's an important piece of this. The overall goal of the research is to create new methodologies, to have some influence around how visual methodologies are used within marginalized communities, particularly within black girls. But also, once the photos were on display, we were invited to do a photography exhibit at the campus museum. And it turned out that it was just overflowing with folks coming to the exhibit to see the photos that the girls had taken. And it actually ended up being kind of like a social justice community organizing technique, because I could guarantee that 95% of the people that showed up to the exhibit had never been invited to that museum and had never felt that that was a place for them. I'm so sorry. My switch is up for you. Oh, I'm done. And I'm loud too, so hopefully they heard. And so to the extent that this part of our day is about using research as a social justice tool, photography, a strong history of that already in, you know, African American communities, and it's a way of also giving young people and black girls in particular another language through which to communicate to us and communicate to the stakeholders in their lives. And creating the displays, the public displays, is a way of rallying the communities around the issues that are important to them and a way for the girls to speak for themselves. So that's it.